Hello, everyone. I am that Weems guy here for yet another episode, and I am amazed by a certain revelation today, and I want to thank you, the audience, for this. There is a website out there that tracks podcast ratings, and I've been watching it for a while, and we quickly moved into the top 10% of all podcasts that are out there. Today, I logged in and checked, and we have jumped into the top 5% of all of the podcast in podcast land. And for less than a year of doing this, I think that's pretty good growth. Now, when I say the top 5%, please understand that there are 2.8 million podcasts out there. So there's a lot of podcasts, and that 5% is still a lot ahead of us. But I'm kind of amazed that what started out as an accident has grown into what it's grown into. We're going to get off of our different format tonight, and we're going to have like a round robin of group questions where the panelists get to ask other members of the panel questions. Before that, we're going to have introductions. Randy Harris is making a return visit. Randy, say hello and introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm Randy Harris with Harris Combative Strategies. I did the podcast with Lee a couple of weeks back about backup guns. We've got another segment of that coming up at some point in the future to hopefully pick up some stuff that we missed last time. But glad to be back, Lee.
Glad to have you back. It's always fun when you get an email from the guest the next day saying, you know what, here are 3 things we should have talked about what we didn't. So that's fine. We moved those to episode 2. That's all we did. We didn't miss them. They're just coming up in the next episode. Michael Green.
Hi, I'm Michael Green. I'm the founder of Green Ops. Got quite a few instructors on our rolls right now. We have a Virginia crew and a Texas crew. And, we do all kinds of training, I guess, related to firearms and some other stuff. But yeah.
I met Michael at a Rangemaster instructor class in Virginia several years ago. And it was the first time I'd ever helped Tom Givens with an instructor class. And back then you had to bring a revolver and do some revolver demos. And Michael's lovely wife was in the class, and she asked me to show her something again with the revolver during a break. And so I'm standing there working with her doing that. And I did not realize that Michael was standing behind us looking over my shoulder. And somebody took a picture of it and they sent it to me later. And it's like, so that's what, the baby giraffe in the jungle feels like when they don't realize the lion's sneaking up on them.
That was a good class. That was a great class, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Guy.
Oh, Guy Schnitzler. I am the owner of DFW Defensive Tactics. DFW Defensive Training. I started as a hosting company, bringing in instructors several years ago. I've been hosting Cecil Birch since 2011, hosted Craig Douglas, hosted Lee, what was that, 2 years ago? No, yeah, 2 years during COVID. Several other instructors. More recently, I've been teaching under my own teaching under DFW Defense Training as my own brand. If people care to know, I am what I call the aviation security specialist. The acronym sits me fine. You can go Google if you want to. Winding down that career here now in the next year. So looking forward to doing more training and more teaching. And big combatives guy. Lots of hours with the Shivworks crew, and I plan to open up my own BJJ and Combatives Academy here.
Now, we gave you 2 good nicknames from which to choose, and you didn't use either one of them.
Which one, Air Buccaneer?
Air Buccaneer or Sky Pirate. We told you could use either one of those.
Yeah, I like the Air Buccaneer, and you know what that came from, did you not? Did I tell you that story about?
No, share it with the audience.
Oh, I was at a hits class with Wayne and Daryl. And, we're doing the introductions like this, and I go around, and I just came back from an international mission the day before. I'm tired, and get to me, I go, I am a sleep-deprived professional tourist who re-hijacks aircrafts. And everybody just looks at me, and Daryl shout, yeah, he's an Air Buccaneer. And that's where that one came from. So they all work.
As Guy stated, he hosted me a couple of years ago. And the range we were using was literally the corner of a cow pasture. that had a electric fence strung around it just outside the boundaries of the range with a berm and target stands. And I grew up on what had been my grandfather's dairy. I know my grandfather was killed in the dairy barn shortly before my birth, but my uncle ran beef cattle on the farm, and then my great uncle lived across the road. He was still in the dairy business, and a great aunt up the road, they still had dairy business going on there. So I was around cattle a lot growing up, and we had to actually park in the field and step over the fence to get to the range. And I walked back out to my truck to get something, and I'm walking amongst the cows to come back to the range, and I noticed that one of them is staring at me intently. And then I look at it and go, this is a problem because that's not a cow, that's a bull. And it was probably a 1,500, 2,000 pound Black Angus bull staring me down. And I know from growing up around them that as long as their head is down and they're grazing, they don't care.
Right.
If they raise their head up and they are looking at you, they are trying to decide whether or not you're a problem,
Yes.
and should they run away or should they attack.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sitting there thinking, I know that this 9mm that I have on me is not going to stop that guy if he chooses to attack. So it's like maintain that. It was almost like when I saw the picture of Michael standing behind me as I'm talking to his wife. Very similar feelings. Very similar. All right. Well, I'm going to toss out a question to these guys, and I'm going to ask it first without the context. So we have a control group for the answer. And the question is how much should your results on drills play into your selection of your gear? So how much should your performance on drills play into your selection of your gear? And I'm going to go to Randy first.
Oh, thanks.
Thank God.
I'm going to keep following the clock.
Okay. So it depends on how realistic the drills are. Okay. So if we are running a drill that is, I'm trying to think of something in particular. I don't know. Let's say okay, here we go. Your setup for Gabe White's class might not be your ideal setup for everyday life, depending on what you do in everyday life and what your wardrobe is. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's, is it like we talked about in the backup gun issue? Backup guns are great from a standpoint of you can hide that under stuff that you can't hide your Glock 34 under necessarily, depending on how big you are. Again, I dress like Fred Flintstone and I'm 6 feet tall and north of 250 pounds. I can hide just about anything, but smaller guys can't. So if they're buying their gear, designing that around what they're doing at some particular person's class to get some particular person's coin or whatever gizmo, that may or may not be ideal.
As we discussed in that episode, there's an 18% difference between your performance with a full-size handgun and the subcompact handgun, or based on actually, the IDPA numbers.
Right. And actually, I'd kind of like to go back and take just a second to talk about that. There are going to be people who are going to say, well, I'm, closer to my big gun performance with a little gun. Okay, great. If you run a Glock 34, Glock 17, Glock 19 all the time, and then you switch to a Glock 26, yeah, you're probably not seeing an 18 to 20% drop off because a Glock 26 is basically a 19 with the bottom of it sawed off a little bit. Okay. But if you go from, say, 1911, or a staccato or whatever to a car 380, yeah, you're going to see a pretty big drop off there in what you're able to do. Again, just mentioning Gabe White, look at the guns that people are using in his class and, making turbo pin runs. Nobody's doing that with a car 380. So that's my challenge to everybody. Show up at Gabe White's class and do it with a car 380. So
I don't know that anybody's done it with a Glock 26.
That's true too. So
I'm not saying nobody could. I just don't know.
Are you challenging me? I'm just kidding.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I've done all of my light pin runs with a Glock 19.
Okay.
So I don't know what the difference would be trying to run a 26. I don't have one anymore. I know we discussed in that last episode what my mathematical difference was on a different test between the 19 and the 48. But
Yeah, I think you said it was like 16%.
16%. Now, granted,
Yep.
that was right out of the box with the 48. Not the same holster as I was running with the, well, actually it was the same type of holster, but you know, there were some other things. I think I could close that gap a little now with the 48 with a little time under it, but
Right.
there are some issues that would keep me from ever getting, I think, the single digit difference with it.
All right.
Michael.
Yeah, I think really it all depends, you know, on I guess a plethora of things. I basically have three setups for holster carry. Mainly I have like everyday carry or concealed carry, and then when I'm working to train folks to go overseas, usually that's an outside the waistband, like a Safari Land or something like that. And then if I'm shooting a USPSA match, then I'll shoot a USPSA rig. I like the idea, like Gabe, shooting USPSA matches with concealed carry gear. I think with the new rule changes, it makes it a little bit easier. But as far as the reloads go, that's where the money is at, is having that rig set up for that. But that really, when you're doing that many reloads, then the match is designed for that. And I guess the stage or the drill that you're trying to do would be similar. But I would advocate that people try to shoot drills as close as they can to their carry method, regardless of if they're used to carrying concealed. Then I think they should probably do that. I plan one day to maybe, and I've shot a few USPSA matches from appendix and concealed carry gear in the past, and I like that. But I think all the drills that I've shot, when I shot Gabe White standards, I shot those from concealment, from appendix. I shot Rogers. No, Rogers I shot from an open rig, but it was just a regular Kydex. But generally I try to do it in my concealed carry gear. I think it's, but again, it depends. If I've never really sat down and said, I don't think I'm going to be able to have a huge difference in shooting from an open rig, because I've worked my concealed carry drill rig. Dry fired it so much that it works that I don't really see a whole lot of difference. So, but I would advocate that people would try their best to shoot the drill from their normal carry. That would be my suggestion, or recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go with if you're shooting drills and standards or whatever with your say a staccato and out on a hip holster, and that's not the way you carry on every day, you're feeding your ego, which there's nothing wrong with. We all need our ego fed from time to time and need to feel good. But if you carry your Glock 48 or 43X and you don't go there shoot those same drills and standards, you're probably shorting yourself. So for me, for the last 20 years, we had SIG 229s, and everything I've been doing has been from concealment and appendix, since I've been carrying an appendix since 2004. Rarely do anything from the hip if I have to. It's all from appendix, all from concealment. We went to Glock 19s last year, so that's what I'm running for a duty weapon. And my off-duty weapon right now is technically, or on agency letter, is an H&K P2000 SK in limb. But also I've been carrying on my LTC a P365 XL. I plan to take drawing a blank, Jedi's class, instructor class in Oklahoma City this July. I'm going to probably run the 365 XL just because that's what I'm carrying more off duty. And for me, since I'm not flying and assigned to training, that's probably what I carry. That's generally what I carry all the time now.
All right. There are two things that prompted this question that I just asked you. And one was, I think, the proliferation of seeing people going to, say, Glock 19s and Glock 45s with compensators on them. because they get better bill drill times, except just pulling the bill drill out as an example. And they're making decisions, I think, on, I'm setting my gun up this way because on these class drills, I get a slightly better performance edge and score with this equipment set up this way. But does that really translate over into the best setup for the usage? But I'm going to tell you what my own personal epiphany was, and I had it 2 weeks ago. I was going to teach a class in Virginia, 3 one-day classes, one of which was a shotgun class. And I've been teaching shotgun for quite a while now, and I have an established set of drills, and I know what my performance level is on each of these drills. And my best times come with the Remington 870P with rifle sights on it that have been replaced with the Trijicon sights, the light pistol sights. And that's my preferred setup. I feel more comfortable with it. And one of the reasons I love running that gun, and I've been reluctant to give it up and to go to something like a Beretta 1301, is my performance on the drills in that class and other shotgun classes with the 870 are better than what I get with the 1301 or my 590 or 870 that have ghost ring sights on them. And then it dawned on me, you're worried about your time on a drill that has 4 shotgun rounds plus a reload. And is that relevant to the context of a defensive shotgun that's contest or usage that's likely to be over in 1 to 2 rounds? So am I basing my decision on what I'm using on relevant data? Should I go out and take that 1301 that's got an aim point on it and concentrate on working on the first shot hit, and then if maybe a follow-up shot, and if I can get an improvement with that over what I'm doing on the 870, would that not be a more valid choice for gear selection? And so I'll throw all that out there and come back around to you, Randy.
I would say stop interjecting logic, or people don't want to hear it. So you are damaging the selling of stuff business. So people need to think they need to buy more stuff to keep the industry going. No, I mean that's 100% correct. How many rounds do we normally see expended in with shotgun usage? It's the old joke about the cops roll up after you shoot the guy and they say, "What'd you shoot him with?" Say, "Well, with a pistol." They ask, "Which way did he run off?" Say, you roll up and say, "What'd you shoot him with?" Shotgun. Say, "Where's the body?" All right, so it's normally 1 or 2 rounds, if that. And again, we're talking about civilian world. We're not talking about, in Afghanistan or in Iraq. But still, reports back from there, people talk about, the Middle Eastern male doesn't do well with a load of buckshot in its sternum. So you've got a gun that is going to require very few shots to make people stop what they're doing. So why are we worried about what a 6-round, firing on the same target is going to be? We can argue body armor maybe, but, let's say if he doesn't go down after the first 2, then, load up the pelvis and load up the face with the next round. So.
And there's a particular drill, I call it the 4+1. And it's actually 5 steel targets arrayed at equal distance. And you start loaded with 4 and you put 1 shot on each of the first 4 steel targets, and then you do an emergency reload and hit the 5. Mm-hmm. Or there's video of me from a range master, the shotgun instructor class, the very first one, where I won the shoot off with the 870 that I described previously, doing it in 3.82 seconds. And so amongst the gun community, there's knowledge out there that I can do that drill in that amount of time. Well, when I'm loading up to go to this class the other day and I grabbed my Mossberg 590, I know from performance in past classes, the best I've ever been able to do on that same drill with the Mossberg is about 450. Because it's got the ghost ring sights on it, and I don't acquire them as quickly as I do those open rifle sights. And so I started I do better with this other gun over here. And it's like, okay. And that's when I started going down the logic trail here of trying to decide, am I making a valid decision? Because I'm basing that decisions off of that one drill. Michael?
Yeah, I think, that really has to deal with your goals, objectives, and what your usage of the firearm is for. So if you're going to shoot that shotgun with those open rifle sights for defensive purposes, then it might be more advantageous to continue to do those drills with that. As an example, I shot, I shoot iron sights, but I've transitioned over to red dot. And when I shoot USPSA, I know my drills. I know the drills, the build drills that I do, and I'm still faster with my iron sights. So I'm shooting a red dot, but I mean, I'm still able to get a sub-second shot from concealment at 7 yards with irons, or excuse me, with a red dot. But when I look at my splits and overall times, I'm still just a little bit faster with the irons. So I've put away the irons and I've shot red dot consistently. And then I switched, just took the iron sights to the range to see how I function. Now the byproduct is that I actually became faster with my irons because of training with a red dot. I've known that too with like a compensator. If I train with a compensated gun, then I know, I'm going to be faster. And so what I'm doing is I'm making myself numb to that speed. I'm becoming comfortable with an uncomfortable speed. And then when I transition back over to a regular gun, I may not be as fast as I am with that compensated gun, but I'm faster than I was before. So I really think that a lot of your thought process is intriguing, but it really has to do with, is it just the drills that you're working? Is it working for advancement in your normal skills? Is it working towards an advancement in the gun that you carry for defensive purposes? Because a lot of that really, there's a lot of crossover, as an example. But like for example, training with a pistol will make you typically better marksman with a rifle, would not the other way around, because of the differences there. But that doesn't mean you should not train with your rifle, of course, right? Because you can always out train your pistol skills, to that certain level. And I guess the same could be true, with whatever you're training with. If you want to transition over to that 1301, then there's going to be some learning curves, just like I'm having those same learning curves with the red dot. Granted, I'm way faster than I was, a year ago with the red dot, but I still haven't caught up to my iron sights yet, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm in my 50s and, I've been training for 30 something years on iron sights, but I guess, at some point, and that's the other thing is transitioning over to a red dot, there's definitely ego involved because I know I'm slower. I see it, at the range and stuff like that. And then if you're competing, because I'm a huge advocate of using competition to test your skills and abilities, not as training, but just, somewhat of a test. I see some folks that are beating me that I'm like, I could have got that guy if I was shooting my irons, but it's something I need to do to maintain situational awareness on my skill level, as far as that the red dot goes. But yeah.
All right. Now I couched it in the terms of shotgun because that was the personal logic trail that I followed. And so what I will go back and work is my 1301 has an aim point on top of it. And so it's going to be a bunch of tests to see, am I getting faster acquisition with that aim point than I would be with the rifle sights.
Yeah.
Open. But we can take this same argument or the same question and apply it to pistols and say red dots.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, I can get better scores on something like the FBI, the Rangemaster Bullseye course with my red dot mounted CZ P10C.
Right.
But does that make it a more valid duty or concealed carry gun? When I look at the context of which I may have to use that duty or carry gun.
Yeah.
And so, and I think from what I see online in some of the groups, and people discussing things is, well, I switched over to the red dot because I got better scores on this drill at B8s at 25.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if that's valid. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to try to tell somebody, hey, you're doing something wrong or incorrect. I just want to ask, let's ask the question. Is that a valid reason for choosing that gear?
I think it's part of it, you know. The other thing though is that people have to realize, is there a shortcoming? Like a lot of folks have difficulty at closer distances with the speed of the red dot. If they know that, then they need to train that, you know. Scott Jedlinski does I think it's 5 yards or 3 yards. I can't remember, for one of his black belt standards. And it's pulling the gun out. And I think it's 3 to the body, 2 to the head. And it's, let me look it up real quick, see if I can find it, but it's some ridiculous time. And, it's, people are like, oh, that's unreal. And, you see people come into his class and they're doing it all the time. They're able to get the gun out and present it in the short amount of time that's required to make those hits. And they're able to say that, hey, look, if you train in a short period of time, then you can overcome, what many people perceive as slower at closer distances. It's just getting used to it is the reality. So the trade-off is that I'm just as fast, just as fast up close with the red dot, but I can be way more accurate when I'm further back, then that might be a really good trade-off, but people have to realize their shortages or their shortcomings, and they have to train those weaknesses. And most people don't do that, I mean, almost everyone that goes to the range, they train what they're good at, One of the good things that I like about, shooting a competition is I video a competition, and then my next training iteration is what I screwed up at the match, because those are my weaknesses, and I utilize those to increase performance or increase my standards. People have to realize that, and they have to swallow some crow every now and then, or some, their egos, and go, hey, what are my weaknesses? And then I need to work on those so that I become better. But yeah, that's the biggest plus to everyone seeing, is that the red dot's way, way more accurate. So that 3 and 2 drill is 3 yards, 3 shots to the center mass alpha, and then 2 rounds to a 3x5 card. And a part-time for black belt standards, 2 seconds. And I've done that multiple times. And I'm telling you, that's pretty darn fast. And, just a little bit of dry fire and going to the range, and you can work that out. And then, everybody's comfortable with shooting, 10, 15 yards with the red dot. But if they take that a little bit of time and work that dry fire, and then work that speed, they'll be able to pick it up rather quickly.
All right. Yeah.
Well, in your context with the shotgun, and you're running these standards and you're comfortable with that shotgun, it, why transition to a 1301 with a red dot? You're good at it, and you got to balance how much training time you have. Do you have the time to transition and make that time and get to where you're as comfortable with the shotgun, the 1301, as you are with your 870? Same with a pistol. If you're willing to dress and carry a pistol that's bigger than, I guess, make the commitment to carry that Glock 45 or that Glock 17, or, staccato with the red dot, and you work to dress around it, be comfortable with being uncomfortable with it, yeah, go for it. But if you go out there and you run all these standards and drills with that bigger gun, and then jump over to that Glock 43X, you're probably doing yourself a bit of a disservice. And you really need to probably think about what you're training for, if there's training, or if it's just gun games for you. But I can see where pushing the standards with one thing and working those standards, and then transition to something else and catching up with them and even surpassing them, is a good place to be.
All right. Randy, you're up first with your group question.
That's a good question. I've got several different ones, but we'll just pick one here and throw it out there. How do you convince people to train what they really need, not to train what they think they want? So
that's the John Murphy business model.
Let's hear it, guys. And in case you guys are wondering what the weird faces I've been making are, my wife's laughing at me because I was trying to sign language with her, and she had no idea what I was trying to say. So that's, if you've seen odd looks on my face, I'm like, what? So anyways.
All right, Michael.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. We run we run a lot of our classes. We focus heavily on marksmanship skills at speed, which is interesting enough because we'll see some folks out there who are wanting to do like break contact drills and stuff like that, and they want to run around like a Navy SEAL. And it's interesting. I had a buddy, and he had terrible marksmanship skills, and I recommended to him that he go to Larry Vickers, and so he went to a Larry Vickers class, and he absolutely hated it. And it's crazy because his shot group went like this. At the end of the class, went like this. So he improved his marksmanship skills, which was really what he needed. And he's like, well, we didn't do any movement or anything like that. I'm like, Larry gave you what you needed, not what you wanted, And I go, two, if you want to run around like a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret, let me explain something to you. I went to a 2-month course, and day one of that course, we spent half a day with just our pistols, no Kevlar, no equipment or anything like that, just dry firing. And then after lunch, we came back and we put all our kit on, and then we dry fired for the rest of the day, and then for the next 2 weeks, we basically sat and shot from a static position, right? Working, the press outs and thousands of rounds, just going over the basics. And then we had to take a test at the end of those 2 weeks before we could really start doing CQB and stuff like that. So, if people really want to train like a Navy SEAL or Green Beret, then if they're really serious about it, then they need to focus on the fundamentals first before they start doing this other crazy stuff. Because in the special operations community, we use it as a way to mitigate risk. If everybody's safe with this and their safeties and stuff like that, then we can advance to other stuff. And we see a lot and a ton of folks out there who are, just going straight from here's a gun. Okay. All right. You know where the trigger is now, where the sights are. Okay. Now we're going to do some shooting and moving. We're going to do some control. We're going to do some cover break contact movements and stuff like that. And then when people get hurt, they wonder why, but I think it's absolutely imperative that people work on those basics, and what they need is to work more of the fundamentals and the basics, but then they need to stair step, they need to go forward. It's difficult, there's different training mentalities, as far as like, hey, let's focus on the basics first and then we'll work speed later. Whereas like, Bill, Rogers shooting school, he starts you off going fast, you're just, here's a target, it's up and gone, and he has a reverse philosophy as far as that goes. He believes in working the speed and accuracy will come. But regardless of what format you're using, somewhere there has to be a bisection of those skills before you can move on to, movement and rolling around in the mud and all this crazy stuff that people like to do, which, there's a time and a place for it, but we can see, based off of all these videos that we see out there today, that very seldom are those skill sets even, necessary. The fundamentals are more necessary. Getting the gun out in a presentation mode in a timely manner. The stuff that a USPSA competitor will work on is splits and transitions. But in average gunfight, your draw is more important. So we need to look at what are we training for? Are we training for a competition? Or are we training for, a USPSA match, or the most important competition, the competition of your life? Defensive situation. So, I like to put a balance there and make sure that I have an extremely well presented draw. I like to try to get as fast as I can on that draw, because I believe that is probably the most important thing in a gunfight that you're going to do with a pistol, is getting that draw out. If you have the time, right? If you can covertly get it out, even better, but accuracy is going to be, second to none on that too. So you have to be able to do it in a timely manner and be very accurate. And, so I think that, how do we get people to focus on that? I don't know. We just tell them, hey, you're gonna do it this way, and if they don't like it, they don't come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but also going with Palisade Training Group. with Steve Mosen and Alan B, and we've been doing some church security classes, and it's kind of scary some days. We come out there and there's some of these guys and gals, and I'm like, by the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to that church because it's scary because they don't have the gun handling skills, and then you try to coach them, and they're like, well, always done it this way. I find it interesting with shooting versus, say, the combat sports like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or wrestling. You go, you have a coach, whether you do group classes, private lessons, and the coach looks at you and says, this is what you need. This is what you're going to work on. Now, it takes someone has to be willing to listen to that person. And a lot of times in the gun world, they don't want to. They're like, well, I've been shooting all my life, or this is how I've always done it, or this is how my last coach taught me. Well, that's great, but you're here. You need to try that. A lot of times we've got to assuage egos, got to get there and massage them and, coach, hey, this is great, but try this kind of thing. It's hard. I don't know if we could get everybody maybe into the combative combat sports mindset of training and going and listening to their coach and be willing to trust what the coach is telling them. That's a hard one to do. We get a lot of time with the guys at work. Well, we want to do this. It's like, well, yeah, well, we're not doing that. But we have the luxury to tell them that when we're going to do this. So yeah, it takes a lot of work, and I think a lot of massaging egos. What I've found though is that 99% of the time, women are easier to get them to do what you ask them, and they're willing to admit, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have an ego here. And with men, it's kind of another way. Well, I'm a born man. I know how to fight. I know how to shoot. And how to drive, and a few other things. And it's like, yeah, we're not that good. Sometimes if you can get them to swallow their ego, that's what we need to do. But it's really hard. People get ego invested in something, and we're stuck with it.
I think that question goes to the whole crux of how do you run a successful training business to a certain degree, with success being well-trained students, not success being bank account.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because we could all be running out there with entertainment classes and selling them much more readily than we do the classes that we actually think we should be teaching. John Farnham has that saying, is that people get out of the car and they walk up and say, when do we jump out of the burning helicopter? Because that's the class that they want. And I mentioned jokingly John Murphy earlier. John's class with FPF training, concealed carry advanced skills and tactics, is 2 days of absolutely everything that you need in life for self-defense purposes. And he has a hard time filling up that class because it does not have the fun value readily available or apparent out there in the Instagram market and the YouTube market that some of the other classes go, because really and truly, you don't get to show up and show how good you are. And there's a lot of draw in that. There's Gabe White's class. Being able to walk away from that with a turbo pen is a pretty big inducement for wanting to take that class, because it gives you an instant credibility in the training community. And so Gabe built in, basically he built in a self-fulfilling repetitive customer base, because I hosted Gabe for one of his very first open enrollment classes, and immediately, he handed out certificates on the end of day 2, and people were like, when are you bringing him back? Because I got dark pen this time, but I was close to light pen. And that's not a knock on Gabe. I was like, I'm sitting there thinking, man, that was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. For my own trying to crack that code, is I divide my classes into what I call technical classes and application classes. And a technical class is like my my trigger management class. And that class, because of the way it gets billed and described, it actually sells very well. And then, I couch my other classes as application classes. And that's where I get the people that want to come and learn more of the how to use the gun versus the how to shoot the gun. And those don't sell as well. But do you want to?
Glad you used the term entertainment, so I didn't have to. In fact, back in 2007, when I went to the National Tactical Invitational with Tom Givens and John Hearn and John Justice. If you're listening, there's a shout out to you, buddy. Anyways, that they had a panel discussion, and that's what they were talking about, back then. That's been what, 14, 15 years now. And even back then, they're talking about how do we convince people that, what they need for, the overwhelmingly likely situation that they're going to run into versus what they think they want to come to class and do. And, to some degree, it's America. It's still somewhat free, and you can spend your money on mostly what you want to spend it on. So if you want to spend it on essentially a gun shooting vacation, then rock on. But some of us that are looking more, like you said, we're looking at this as a successful class is someone calls us or texts us later on and says, hey, your training saved my life. That's a success. Is, some more money in the bank account nice? Yeah, it's nice. But having this discussion with Craig Douglas probably 10 years ago, to quote him on this, he says, we're on a holy mission to make sure people come home alive. And, I agree with that 100%.
All right, Mr. Green, your turn to throw a question out.
So I get a question that students ask me quite a bit. I've even had other instructors ask me the same question, like, hey, what class do I need to take to get better? I hear it all the time. And when I was a young military guy, I had the luxury of having all these top trainers come to Fort Bragg and train us. And we'd always say, well, what's the next guy we want to train with? And then if we couldn't get them, some of us would get together and go train with them on our own because we thought that was going to make us better, And then one guy said, hey, instead of spending all that money on training with these other guys, why don't we go to the range and practice what we learned from those other 3 guys we trained with? Mm-hmm. And we got significantly better once we started training together and, bringing the pro timer out. And we tell folks, when they come to our class, we talk about, the 5 pillars of success that we preach and advocate at Green Ops. And we tell them like, hey, we're not trying to turn away your business, but if you follow these 5 pillars of success, then this could theoretically be your last class that you ever need to take in regards to skill, and I think a lot of people, and myself included in my younger days, were more concerned about taking a class from certain people to get better. I think there's always a good class out there. That's really, like, for example, Gabe White's class. That's a great tune-up. I don't care. You're shooting 1,000 rounds in 2 days. You're going to get a good tune-up in that class regardless. So, but in general, if I'm trying to work specific skills, Gabe may not be working those. I need to work those on my own. And so I tell some folks that are trying to get better to say, hey, look, instead of looking and traveling and spending, a couple $1,000s on the ammo, gas, hotel, and course tuition, why don't you just take a couple of days and space it out, take off work early, and spend half a day on the range for a week, and sit there and look at those drills that you're trying to do to get better at, Pistol Forum has those, drill of the day. And if you look, Gabe White used to press those out, I think it was drill the month or drill the week, but he'd push them out there with a week.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Those were excellent drills, and Pistol Forum and pistoltraining.com, they both have them up there. They're still there today, or you could just scour the internet for the different drills and start working those. But I think the reality of it, the question is like, hey, how do you get better? Do you have classes that you want to take, or do you have training that you need to take? I think there's a mix in between somewhere, a subtle answer. But I guess the question is, what do you do? How do you what class do you take to get better, or what training do you do to get better? Do you train on your own, or do you train with an instructor? That's my question.
Right, yeah.
Well, it's a little bit of both. You need to train with an instructor to find out where your weaknesses are. Again, back to the jiu-jitsu, I train with a coach. He comes up, you need to work on this. And that's what we'll work on with drill. So get you a coach and or take a class. Find an instructor you want to take a class with every year or two and find out where your shortcomings are. So you got a good draw to first shot, but you're a little slow on your reloads. You got to go back and take a tune up with your coach or that class. And then you start working that dry practice. And then you start working at live practice or live fire and just keep working it. And then just go back for a tune up. For like me, I've got a lot of time training with Craig Douglas over the last 16 years. And I use his classes as an audit where I need to go fill in. Well, I need more wrestling time for the stand-up clinch work, being able to work in and earn my draw while in that clinch in control of that person who's bigger, younger, stronger, faster. Or, I need more work on my default cover. And I use that and then I practice that and dry practice it on my own. And then I'll go out to the range and incorporate into live fire drills for those, if that's what I'm planning to work on that day is the ECQC shooting and stuff. Like I train a lot with the hits crew, Wayne Dobbs, Gerald Bulkey, because they're here in Dallas, of course, and it's easy. And, I'll go there and we'll take, we'll go pull out shotguns with Sarah. I'll go take a shotgun class with them. And then I'll come back and I'll work and I'll dry practice it. And, I think if we could encourage people to kind of look at it, taking training, again, we're back to Randy's question earlier, or, offshoot of it, training versus taking classes for fun. Believe me, going out and shooting and having fun and running around, doing some scenario based type training with your AR, your shotgun, or your pistol is fun. But for me, that's not what I'm looking for. I want to improve my skill. And how do I do it? And for me, it's finding a smaller number of people to train with, taking classes with them, and then working the material year, 2 years later, go back to them, see what's changed, what I need to work on again, and start plugging that back in, basically rinse and repeat and go that route.
Randy?
I would say it's the old how do you get to Carnegie Hall answer: practice, practice, practice. But it kind of helps to have somebody teach you how to play the piano to begin with, so that you know what to practice. So that's, I look at it as somebody wants to know what's the class that I need to take. Well, what are you looking to accomplish? All right. So what is your real world situation? Are you looking to get better at shooting a match? Okay, then that class is going to be drastically different than I'm simply worried about dealing with problems out in the street. We're not going to work a whole lot on split times in that class. We're going to work a lot more on, verbalization, maintaining distance, managing unknown contacts, stuff like that. Some shooting in the appropriate envelope of time and space. Not going to be doing a whole lot of 35 to 50 yard shooting in that class. We're going to be doing a whole lot of 3 to 5 yard shooting in that class. So it's just a matter of, kind of determining what it is that they need. And then if you don't have let's say they need something just, out of the ordinary, and that's not something that's in your repertoire, pass them off to somebody else that's got that skill set. I recommend people go train with other folks all the time. Say, hey, that's somebody that specializes in that. And if you kind of look at, I'll talk about, I jokingly say, people say, what's your background? I'm like Batman. I travel around with different subject matter experts and learn stuff from them. So, if I may have a pretty good grasp of something, but if I know somebody that's a master at it, and this person's really serious about getting as good as they want to get, and they're going to put the practice time into it, I'll just say, go talk to that guy. Especially if it's competitive shooting. I'm a decent competitive shooter, but I'm not, like I said. I just went blank. What's his name? The guy that was beating everybody in IDPA by like over a minute at the World Championship a few years ago.
Vogel?
Oh, it's killing me. But yeah, Bob Vogel. I say Bob Vogel's not losing 1 second of sleep over me beating him in a match. Okay, I shoot pretty well, but he's not worried about me. So if somebody's looking to be as good a match shooter as they can be, and Bob Vogel's got a class that matches up with their schedule, I say go take that class. So again, it's kind of figure out what they actually need and figure out how to fill those holes.
Well, I'm going to paraphrase a John Hearn argument, and gosh, he'll listen to this and know I said something positive about him, and that's going to be hard for me to deal with. I may need counseling. John argues that, say, somebody took an original orange gun sight 250 back in the 70s, early 80s, from Cooper and the original crew, and they diligently practiced that over the years. Today, they're still a valid person skill set wise. That would be a very dangerous person to square off with. If they had taken and diligently practiced that, say twice a month, they had gone and worked the things they learned in Gunsight 250. Now we can take and insert, range master combative pistol and the 5-level class that they used to do there at the mothership. We could insert a class from any of the group of us on this panel that would be along those same lines, and that the students took that and they practiced it diligently, then that might be the only class they ever need. But the difference is, I think, having the experienced coaching eye that is watching for errors and making sure that techniques are correct, and watching for things that you don't realize that you're doing when you're just working with yourself. Now, Guy's in an excellent position that he has a training group there with Wayne and Daryl and Steve Moses and those guys. And if you can go to the range with those guys for your practice sessions, all right, you've got your coaching built into that. But not all of us have that luxury. And to a certain extent, classes are the most cost-effective coaching that one can get, because you may not be able to afford to pay Bob Vogel for private lessons, because he's not going to come to your house twice a month.
Right.
And unless you making it financially worthwhile for him, but you might can go spend a weekend with him and pay for a class a couple of times a year. And that's where I think the value of training. And then you can, when you want to learn certain skill sets, that's when you go to those classes. But I will also say that the whole training community somewhat becomes a social club for a lot of us. And to a lot of the students, it becomes, you start looking at that hierarchy of needs. And to a certain extent, it's like, baseball card collecting. I've trained with this instructor, this instructor, this instructor, this instructor, because when we stand around and talk, you don't want to be the guy that's only trained with, that hasn't trained with all of the big names. Everything. So I think there's some of that pressure built into it. Whereas, if you go back to the episode we did with David Cagle back at the beginning of the podcast, where he's talking about build a baseline of proficiency in one system, and then start testing that system with the others, instead of go to this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, because then you get this whole jumble of thing and you're not really having something to practice and go with. Any follow up on what you were asking, Michael, or do we all do it?
I think everyone pretty much came to a similar conclusion. I just think that is specifically in, specifically the training arena, the folks that go to all those classes, many of them, probably 90% of them, are spending too much time going to classes and not enough time training themselves. We see the same folks, in these classes over and over again. I go and train, with different folks. I just went to, Florida, trained with Tom Givens and his shotgun instructor course. And, I saw people I saw up here in Texas down there, so, but in general, I think that it's great that people are out there getting training. Don't get me wrong. But I think that a good portion of those people would be way better off if they said, I'm going to take one less class a year than I normally do. And these are habitual trainers, what I'm talking about. Then I think they'd be much better off. Now, the average person that takes one course a year, I think that's, 1 or 2 courses a year. That's slightly different than the other folks that we're talking about. But, we know who the culprits are.
Now, that one course a year he's talking about giving up, he's not talking about giving up one from anybody on this panel.
Right.
You still need to take all of our courses.
So that means a bare minimum of 4 classes that they have to take every year.
That's right.
Hey,
That's right.
One a quarter.
That's right.
That's right.
What happened. Yeah.
It's funny. I took my first open enrollment class in April of 2014, and then I saw a picture from an event in 2016, and I either personally knew or knew by their face over half the people in the picture. already because it was the same people showing up at the
Yep.
same things again. And it's, I've traveled across the country for a class, and there will be people in it that I know from other classes. And in that extent, it's really good. But yeah, there's a very small percentage of the population out there that is actually actively engaged in the art, so to speak. Mr. Guy, your turn to ask the question.
Well, that segues right into my question. How do we grow that percentage of the population that trains? Even just locally, even with local, IDPA shooters or USPA shooters, people they can go to their local, gun range and shoot with. How do we grow that? How do we make that percentage bigger? Getting them to that one class a year and then practice, and then maybe, every once or twice a year, not necessarily take a class, but take a follow up with a coach in their area. How do we build that percentage so we have more of them,
All right,
more
Randy?
students?
Yeah, once you figure that out, let me know. Yeah, I mean that's the question. I have the, my local training group that I run, and we will, we probably run between 6 and 12 people at each one. I mean, we may have some where we have 15 people show up, and we may have some where we have 3 or 4 show up, just depending on what their schedules are like. We will occasionally get a new person to come out, and we might get them to come back again, and they may just decide that it's, maybe it's a little too much for them, or that they just don't fit. Not everybody fits everywhere. So the thing is, though, more times than not, they do fit. It's just getting them in the door. And because people come and they'll say, well, this is not at all what I thought it would be like. And I was like, well, what exactly did you think it would be like? Well, I was afraid that everybody would be so much better than I am, and all this. To say, look, I run a one-room schoolhouse here. I'm going to have third graders working on their math, and I'm going to have juniors and seniors in high school working on their math. Just focus on your own math, focus on your own homework here, and you're going to get better. You're going to improve. And I've got guys that have been, coming to this thing for 10 years, and these dudes are shooting the air marshal, the old air marshal qual, and they're passing it every time they shoot it. So, and then but how do you market that when a lot of the folks, if you're not shooting 1,000 rounds in a day, they're not interested. If you are not somebody that has a gigantic YouTube presence, they're not interested.
Right.
They don't understand that some people just aren't interested in being famous. They're interested in doing good work.
Right,
So, how do we get those people to show up? Somebody in class I taught recently said, you need to give away swag. That's what the thing is. You need a coin, you need like t-shirts or something to give away to like the top 2 shooters, something like that to get them to, if they come thinking that they might take some trinket home with them, then they might be more likely to show up. And there may be some truth to that.
Isn't that what Gabe White? I'm sorry. Isn't that what Gabe White does with the pins? The dart. Basically, like we said earlier, like Lisa, he's got built in because, oh, I got this pin, I want that next one, and so they go practice and train. So maybe that is a point. Yeah.
Mr. Green.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question that we've all been trying to figure out. I think for us, I see where I'm at. I see that fear is a great motivator. When things started getting crazy a couple of summers ago, where people were burning down cities and stuff like that, we had a huge influx of people who wanted to learn to train. We'll have folks who, they say birds of a feather flock together, but we've had people come to classes who are, totally different than our average student. And like, why are you here? I was robbed, or I was victimized. Oh, well, now you went from anti-gun to being pro-gun. But I'll tell you who I want to give a shout out to is Tim Reedy does an excellent job out here in Texas. he sponsors or runs IDPA matching, gets a lot of new shooters that way. And you see a new shooter, and I'm assuming most of those people are coming out to shoot the same reason that I'm coming out to shoot, and that's to be better at defensive skills. And then those folks see their shortcomings in the match, and then they get more interested in defensive training. And I think he does an excellent job. I see it all the time. I'm just amazed at the people, and you see the skill level too. I'll go out and shoot a match, and there was someone that was there, 6 months ago, and they were brand new. And then 6 months later, they're completely new shooters. They've taken a couple classes from Tim. Tim's also really good at filling up a range master class down there, whenever he hosts those. So, I think that's probably one of the best ways. Like if you're looking at like asymmetrical warfare or asymmetrical, gathering or polling students is goes after the competition crowd, the defensive crowd, the new shooter crowd, and they just grow from there. I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah. And that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at so much as building business as building more Second Amendment proponents.
Oh yeah.
And that's, if we can get more people who start training more, and spreading the word and showing people who are on the fence about shooting and guns in general, and start pulling them and say, hey, it's safe, cool, come look, and bring them in. That's all people of all stripes and all is is the goal, is what I'm looking for. The more we can bring in, the better off and more secure our rights will be. So
yeah. No, I 100% agree. The other thing I think that is another great motivator, once you get them in the door, is the way, like, for example, Tom Givens, the way he presents. When he talks about the FBI Miami shootout, I remember, matter of fact, Lee, it was a class that the first class that I met you at, where you were helping Tom out. My wife, at the end of the class, after Tom explained how violent these two guys were, their backgrounds, and how they had done this to other people, not just robbed banks. The most gratifying thing to me was she looked at me and said, I will never leave the house again without a firearm. And to me, I don't care how much that class was at Tom that we took. To me, it would have been, I would have paid 10 times as much just to get her to say that, and she became more serious about training because of that. So, God bless Tom for that class, it meant so much to us that, you're gonna have to hold on, buddy. Okay. Thanks. But yeah, so, it meant so much to me that it put my wife in a different mentality altogether.
Right.
And, but that's after we've already gotten them into training, but I think it's a combination of things. One, I think Tim does a great job of getting them in the door. And then when you hear presentations like Tom's, I think that's the other way to segue them into more training and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a tough question to answer, because everybody's different too,
I also think that like different areas are different. Because I know Lee knows him. You guys know Ronnie Dodd, used to teach at Rogers. He and I lived kind of in the same area, so we would see each other at matches and stuff. And he would always joke about it. He's like, what our problem is? Everybody around here grew up around guns. And I was like, well, I grew up around electricity. That doesn't mean that you want me working on the wiring in your house. So, and that's one of the things that, how do you convince people that they really do need to take a class? And, the IDPA matches, for instance, you've got guys that keep going to the match and don't ever get any better. You would think those would be the guys who'd be like, maybe I should do something different and go to a class.
Right.
So, it's just, if Tim's getting good results from IDPA classes, God bless him. But kind of in my area, like I said, it seems like everybody's, well, I grew up around guns.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's just the same out here in Texas,
Yes.
when we've got, a crew that I started teaching out in Virginia, and our classes out there, it seems like people in Northern Virginia kind of know that they don't know about guns. And so they seek out more training. Whereas when we moved to Texas, we're like, oh, there's ranges everywhere. And there's guns everywhere. So this should be easy to start training folks out here. And it was the contrary, you know.
Yeah.
As an example, if you go to an indoor range in Northern Virginia, you're going to wait 10 to 30 minutes for a lane to open up. Here, there's indoor ranges. There's no problem. You just get on a lane, you know, there's no wait.
Right.
Same with the outdoor ranges, because there's outdoor ranges here. You know, you have to drive over an hour when I lived in Northern Virginia to get to an outdoor range. Here, they're just, hey, 20, 30 minutes away. Same thing. There's not a waiting line or anything like that. You just get up there and shoot. And then same thing with shooting competitions in Northern Virginia. I had to stop shooting competitions in Northern Virginia because if you didn't sign up the first 10 minutes that the match opened, it was sold out. Here, they're still doing walk-ups. You can sign up as you walk up, you know. And that's because, like you said, everybody has a gun. Anyone can go in their backyard if they got enough yardage out there and shoot. And I think they just don't know what they don't know. But we still do. We've got some really talented students out here too, though. You know, they'll come out and realize, hey, I want to get better, and they'll just blow it away. But yeah, it's a tough one in areas like this. You know, it's tough to market. You know, when people say, hey, man, what are you going to teach me about guns? Well, I can show you a lot if you give me. You know?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Tim Reedy. Tim and Rick Remington did an episode with me a couple of weeks ago, and that episode has gone over really, really well numbers wise, and because I think they hit on some really key things. And I think it was Rick that coined the phrases that with new students, you need to be a gateway and not a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, part of that was because someone showed up at a shooting class is that they didn't sign up to be a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male that votes Republican and does everything else. Is that if we're going to make this the big tent, we have to make the environments in the classes. We have to make the environment in the classes a Big Ten environment.
Everybody's welcome. Yes.
Everybody's welcome. It's a human right.
Yeah.
You know, self-defense is a human right. Even the United Nations recognizes in their Declaration of Right that self-defense is a human right.
Yeah.
And, you know, as Mike was saying about the ranges, I think the biggest threat that we face as far as the Second Amendment in America as we know it is that more and more people grow up not anti-gun, they grow up non-gun.
Yeah.
And as each successive generation gets further and further and further away from it's a big deal, then they're more accepting to it all being changed and going away. And of course, you know, Thomas Jefferson said that one generation should not govern another. And that may eventually become the will of the people. And of course, we don't want to see that because that's, you know, this is us. But, you know, to me, it's personal. I would not be here today if my grandfather had not used a gun in self-defense because my father wouldn't be here. You know, he used it to save my father, who was a baby. It's personal to me.
Right.
And then I grew up with it, you know, as part of my lifestyle. And for other people, that's just not the case. But we need to make them feel welcome. When I say them, I'm referring to the people who show up that are new, they're seeking help. They need to be welcome. They not need to be, they signed up for the lodge meeting.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny is that a lot of times those people come when times are bad.
Yep.
And when it's hard to actually do this, because right now gas is $4 a gallon. And I'm sure we're all seeing numbers starting to dwindle in classes as people have less disposable money. Same time, you know, and it hurts that when 9mm ammo was $115 for 1,000 rounds, and gas was $1.89, and hotel rooms were $100 a night on average. We didn't have a whole lot of people lining up. You know, I need help. But as soon as they get frightened by world events, it's amazing who comes out of the woodwork that, you know what, I need some help here.
Mhm.
But it's harder for them to do that.
Yeah.
We've been going about an hour and 20 minutes. So actually with
Oh, wow.
the three of you guys, it worked out just about right on the time. So we'll go around and any final thought and pitch anything you got coming up. Randy.
I don't know. I will cede my time to Guy. Go ahead and I'll come back later.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're following the clock. We're following the clock. So Michael's next.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. So I've got I'm heading up to Virginia to teach my advanced covert carry class up there. I think that's not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. And then I'm heading out to tactical response with Andy to shoot the surgical speed shooting conference that Andy Stanford's having out that way. Guy, are you going to that?
I might make it. I originally had other plans, and I got to check with Alan this week and see, but those plans since got canceled. And now it's like, okay. So Alan was going to check on that, but I'll get up with him and see. But yeah, I'm going to try to make that.
Yeah, that's in the near future. That's the major things that we have coming up for us. We have classes almost every weekend, either in Virginia or here. We run simultaneous classes in Texas and in Virginia. We're looking at hosting. I think a CQB course by Orion Training Group in July down at Dilley, the ranch down in Texas there, Dilley, Texas. And then I think we're looking at hosting Matt Howe and Rob Howe from Simtac for shooting their 2-day shotgun course in Texas and in Virginia. So that'll be a good time. But I think that's October and December timeframe for one of those. Yeah, October I think in Virginia and December here. But
make sure it's not the same weekend as the Rangemaster Instructor Conference for the one in Virginia.
You know what?
I think that's like October, isn't it, or November?
The Rangemaster Instructor Conference is like October 21st and 22nd.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I have something going on. I will be out of town that weekend, but yeah, that's it is not that weekend. It is I think the 8th and 9th. I'm not sure. But either way, I made sure that it wasn't because I want to hit that. I wanted to try to make it to the Tom Givens Rangemaster Instructor reunion, but it looks like as of now, my work has me out of town that weekend. So I'm unless I can get out of that last minute, who knows? But I would definitely try to make that. But all our stuff is online, at www.green-opsops.com. And our training schedules for Northern Virginia and for Texas are also on there. And then same on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all that good stuff. But yeah.
All right, Guy.
Oh, let's see. Well, for defensive training, I am hosting Paul Sharp of Straight Blast Gym, Illinois, for his multidisciplinary optimization course 2.0. What's that? 2 weeks, the 4th and 5th of June. It's basically his take on the ECQC Shipworks material. It's going to be a good time. That's about it for now with that. And then I'm not sure about PTG training, what we've got coming up. It's coming up in the summertime. We tend to back off because of the heat and misery in Texas. So I'm not sure what we coming up. Also, I do think we're hosting you. No, that's CCW Safe hosting you for your Red Dot class in October. Up in October, I think.
That's not me.
No, I meant Michael. I'm sorry, Michael.
Yeah, it's October.
Yeah, so we'll be hosting Michael for that. And that's all I think at the time. But yeah, you can hit ptgtrainingllc.com for any of our classes there. I'm more social media oriented also. DFW Defensive on Instagram, and then just DFW Defensive Training on Facebook for anything I got going on, or if you want to contact me.
All right, Randy.
All right. You can check out my schedule, what there is of it, right now at harriscombative.com. I'm still working on getting my calendar page built on the website. So, which is why I just happen to have my laptop with me here in the hotel room. Otherwise, I would not have even been able to get on with you this evening. It was just kind of a happenstance that I even saw your email and then was able to get connected with you. Assuming that I survive my trip to Mexico this coming week and make it back, we'll be doing a rifle class at the end of June in the Chattanooga area. We'll also be doing a vehicle class sometime later on in the summer, probably in August. And we're working on getting a low light class scheduled. That's probably going to be probably July. Those are the kind of bigger things coming up. Obviously, if I've got a mailing list that I send out. So if folks want to get on my website, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to put you on the mailing list. And again, if somebody wants to host a class, I'll be happy to travel. So.
All right, folks, you can find my training schedule at firstpersonsafety.com. And I've got classes coming up in Terre Haute, Kalamazoo, trying to think of them all in order. Terre Haute, Kalamazoo, San Antonio, and I'll be San Antonio the first weekend in August, first Saturday in August. It's just a one-day class,
Right.
and Nashville, and then Miamisburg, which is the Dayton, Ohio area in October. And so that's what I've got scheduled to come up. I'll also be at the Andy Stanford Speed Shooting Summit in June. I'll be there for that. So maybe I'll get a chance to see you guys there. Since y'all will be there, and I'm looking forward to that. Andy's a real cool guy. Andy did an episode several months back. So if you're just finding the show now, go back and find out Andy's episode. One other thing, guys, we have a Facebook group now dedicated to the show. It's just search for That Weems Guy on Facebook, and you can get in there. And all guests are invited to post all their classes and everything in the group, as well as we like to have feedback and discussion with the audience on the episodes, and then anything else that you want to throw out there. So audience, join the group as well, and you get a chance to ask follow-up questions of the people that are on the show and see what classes are coming up. And we understand, audience, that your most important asset is your time, and thank you for choosing to spend it with us.